Hello, I'm Dr. Jim Lockard. I'm an ordained minister with Centers for Spiritual Living for about 30 years. And I retired from pulpit ministry in 2015. I now live in Lyon, France. And my ministry today is working with spiritual communities and spiritual organization about looking at new ways of being in ministry. We're in changing times, if you haven't noticed. The pace of change in human society and human culture has been speeding up for quite some time. And things like the pandemic and so forth have sort of turbocharged that change. One of the things that we're seeing in spiritual community is that people are changing the way they relate to religion and spirituality. Many of our communities are seeing reductions in attendance, reductions in financial giving, and what used to work doesn't seem to work as well or work at all anymore. So what I've been doing and looking at things like cultural evolution and so forth is trying to come to understand that and to look at how can we design communities moving forward that are important to people, that offer them something they want to come and join in with and participate in. So in October, on October 8th, when I'm speaking to you virtually at the Unity Eastern Conference, that's what we'll be talking about, a number of topics that relate to this issue. The idea of leadership in an evolving culture. How do we do what we do as spiritual leaders in a time that requires that it's a very different? Our teachers, many of them, many of the greats of our New Thought movement, my sense is if they came along today and started, they would not achieve the levels that they achieved doing the things they did then. It seems like it's just different today. So how do we come to terms with that? How do we move forward? Not to recapture what was, but to develop what's next. So my topic is called Current Revolutions in Leadership Development. Not just the evolution, but revolutions. Revolutions are something that happens spontaneously for the most part, but they happen because things are changing and there is a need for a more strong or rapid action to deal with those changes. The changes aren't glacial. The changes are happening more and more quickly. And we are in a world that is going to be crying out for spiritual support. As I sit here in Lyon, France today, it's near the end of June, and we're in what's called a canicule in France, which is a heat wave. The temperature's in the 90s. It's going up into the hundreds later over the next couple days. And many of you are experiencing that where you live or have experienced it or will experience it. And what we've learned about climate change is that it's happening more and more quickly. We're becoming more and more aware of its effects. And it was on us quicker than we thought it might be in many cases. So how do we have a revolutionary response to stepping into a new way of being? How do we do that together? How do we do that carrying forward the timeless principles of our New Thought teachings, but doing it in new forms, in new ways, in new aspects, in new treatments, in new expressions? And I don't think we're going to have a single model. And, I've written a couple of books about this, one called Creating the Beloved Community, the other called Being the Beloved Community, which speak to these issues. And it seems like what's unfolding is not a return to a single model, which I call the Sunday go-to-meeting model, but probably we're going to have as many different ways of being in ministry as there are ministers, as there are communities, as there are places. So what we're going to be needing is a greater sense of innovation, a greater sense of willingness to try new things, even though they may not succeed, and a greater sense of patience with ourselves as we go through this process. Some of the things we'll talk about in my presentation, diversity and inclusion, because, it's important. We recognize the diversity of who we are, the magnificence of spirit, which is a unitary oneness idea that expresses in the infinite diversity of this universe and this planet and the people on this planet. So that's important. We're going to talk about digital spirituality a little bit, how moving online and moving into other forms, using AI, using live streaming, and all those other things that are beginning to open up in new ways. How to make your digital members not feel like second citizens to your in-person members is an important concept as well. We want to rethink spiritual community in terms of what does it mean to be together? How can we serve the needs of people in community, not only in their spiritual education, but in their need to be in a collective, a group of people that support them in their growth, support them in their failures and in their successes? How do we do that in a better way? The consciousness of leadership, we'll talk about that. I like to think about the idea of evolutionary leaders, people that have vision and that recognize that there's a lot of different ways to do what we do. And the old command and control kind of leadership just doesn't work anymore. It hasn't worked for some time. So self-awareness, being emotionally and psychologically healthy is critical to this kind of leadership. Being able to have empathy for the people that you're working with, the community, the larger community, and your fellow ministers, your fellow people in ministry is increasingly important. It's so easy to become scattered and angry and be in conflict these days. Have you noticed? Well, what people are really seeking is connection and in a positive, loving way. And we have that to offer. It's a basic element of our teaching. So let's find ways to express that more and more effectively. My concept of the beloved community, which came from Dr. Martin Luther King and Dr. Howard Thurman, is a recognition that a spiritual community, like any community, needs to be something, part of something bigger than itself. The universal beloved community is a place where war and poverty and homelessness and such will not be tolerated. It's something to work toward. And what we want to do with our own spiritual communities is create microcosms of that kind of world that can then we can help to overflow that into the larger society. If social justice is your thing, can we learn to be in social justice with a sense of compassion and clarity and wisdom? Can we stand for what we believe in without creating more conflict? These are the questions that we'll be answering, or at least we'll be exploring. I don't know that we'll have all the answers. I really hope you'll be with us, and I hope that we'll be able to have a great dialogue and conversation as we go through. And I'm open to anyone who wants to connect with me before, during, or after the conference. I'm sorry I can't be there in person. It's just not going to work out at this point in time. But I'd love to be in contact. My email is drjimlockard@gmail.com. And I'm on Facebook as Jim Lockard or Jim Lockard-author. And I'd love to hear from you and what you're thinking. And I'd like you to read my blog, if you would, newthought-evolutionary.wordpress.com, where I talk about these issues and some many other issues. So remember, it's the first week. It's actually the beginning of the second week in October, beginning on the 6th. And I'll be speaking on the 8th. And I'm looking forward to seeing you there at the Unity Conference, Unity Eastern Conference. Thank you so much.